Hello and welcome to Starting Off Right, Professional Workplace Success. I'm Andy King with the AmeriCorps Vista program. I'll be your host. I'm joined by our production team members, Bethany DeSablin and Joanne Lau. You'll see us in the chat and the Q&A to help address questions that you may have during the session. Starting any new opportunity, whether it's Vista service or a new job, means meeting new people, taking on new responsibilities, and learning a new workplace culture. This session helps you get off on the right foot, whether you're in Vista service or once you finish and move to a new position. Here are the goals for today's session. By the time we finish the webinar, we hope that you'll be able to, first of all, identify the key elements of organizational culture that can assist you in workplace entry. Next, that you'll be able to apply effective practices for in-person, telephone, and email communications. We also hope you'll be able to put to use the strategies that will enhance a smooth transition at your sponsoring organization. And finally, that you'll be able to implement these effective techniques for developing strong, proactive relationships with your supervisor and your peers. Next, we'll take a quick look at our agenda. We'll start out by looking at what organizational culture is and how office dynamics can work. We'll then look at communication and how to ensure that what you intend to say is actually what gets heard. We'll look at things that you can do to build a productive relationship with your Vista supervisor or another supervisor after you leave your Vista service, and ways that you can cultivate your own patience for times when things aren't going as you'd hoped. Finally, we'll look at ways that you can prepare for your next position. And of course, we'll have time for your questions. Now I'm really delighted to introduce and welcome our speakers for this webinar. We're delighted to have with us Denise Riebman. Denise is a Vista alumna, having served as an AmeriCorps Vista member in 1994 and 1995 at the Denver Indian Center in Denver, Colorado. Denise is now the Director of Career Development and Alumni Services for the Trachtenberg School of Public Policy and Public Administration at the George Washington University here in Washington, D.C. In addition to this role, Denise also provides private career coaching through careerhappinesscoaching.com. Denise is an active member of AmeriCorps Alums, and she serves as the official AmeriCorps Alums career coach. Later on in the session, we'll hear from Vista alum Josh Edwards, and also from a current Vista leader, Amanda Pham, both of whom will talk about their firsthand experiences. But now, let me turn things over to Denise Riebman.
Thank you so much, Andy. I am thrilled to be here. And as you were doing the presentation, first of all, I was thinking about how long it was ago that I was a Vista. But most of all, I was thinking about how many jobs I've had between my Vista service right after college to now. And that truly is what I think enables me to do this workshop today. It might be my experience running career centers, but really it's probably my experience having done things right, but also done some things wrong. And that's what I really want to talk a lot about today, is how to avoid some of this. And this presentation I created with that in mind, knowing what some of the questions that you are going to have. And, you know, I want to let people know, because I know that we have people who've maybe just started off their service. They might be partway through. They might be thinking about the position, the next position after their service. So really using this presentation with all lenses of wherever you are. So we're going to first start kind of on this macro level view, like organizational culture. And I really think that it's so important to kind of stop, looking, and listen at this point. Organizational culture is like the collective value, beliefs, rituals, and assumptions that impact this workplace. This can be shaped and influenced by the history, people, the current culture. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in there. It can be, honestly, really nuanced, really complex, and really confusing. It also, when you start your position, it can be invigorating when you see what's going on and exciting. So I always tell people, as much as you can, to stop, look, and listen before you jump right in. Now, again, if you've already started in your position, what we're going to talk about, these concepts are still valuable for your current role or for what's next. So let's think about that. Step. First and foremost, it seems so kind of a given, but I am amazed at the number of people who don't take the time to initially just get to know your colleagues. And part of it, yes, is the talking to your colleagues, but I also think a big portion is listening. I know for me in particular, when I was in my 20s and I was starting a job, I was really nervous. And I was like, oh, I need to feel like I know everything and know everybody. And I did a lot more talking than listening. As I went into work in my 30s and 40s, I've learned that listening is powerful because you're going to hear what people are saying, but also what they're not saying about historical things within the organization. So it's just going to give you that sense of things. So as much as I know often you want to start, and particularly if you're in your VISTA service, if you're just doing a year, you're like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do. Taking this time to just get to know colleagues can help you get a sense of things. If you're in an organization, some VISTA positions, my organization was fairly small when I did VISTA, and that there was just, but there was at least 3 or 4 different departments. I used to oversee several different VISTA programs. Some of them were in very, very small centers where there was 2 or 3 people, doesn't matter in a departmental. Some of them were placed in United Ways. If you have different departments, take the time to get to know them. Because you might not realize when you first start that, like, if you're in, say, the youth development side, what they're doing in development might matter to you, or what they're doing in the workforce side. So it's important to get to know other people. And then also multi-level relationships. This is important because, often we think, oh my gosh, I'm young. Why would someone at a higher level want to get to know me? It is really critical to get these sense, and they often will want to take the time to share. So sometimes for people that are higher level, you might not have as much time with them, but even if you can ask the executive director, the head of the board, for time for coffee. I remember I was at an organization where we started to volunteer together, and that was really helpful because it took us out of the workplace and in a more informal environment, which was not a happy hour, which I'm not usually a fan of in terms of really getting to know people. I think when you're doing a volunteer project or doing something outside of work, it helps you really get to know people. Sometimes people will do potlucks, different organizational fun events where people feel really comfortable. I really can't emphasize this enough. I remember once I was at a nonprofit. This was in my early 30s, and it was very clear that there was a real hierarchy at the organization, and I happened to be in the program staff and the people that were in the field doing the work. And I remember I was having lunch with one of them, and she actually said to me that, like, I was one of the first people who'd ever actually sat down and really wanted to hear their ideas. So instead, they had felt like all these people on the higher level were making these program decisions that they didn't understand how that would impact things. So it helped me do my job better. And it also helped them feel like they had a buy-in to things, that they really had someone very much listening to them. So first we need to stop, then we need to look. You're coming into this job. What does it mean about the work hours? Who's coming in when? This is kind of the nuances. They might tell you, oh, you work 9 to 5, but then you might start to see, oh, this person that's like the superstar in the organization, they always tend to get in there at 8:30, get their coffee, and are at their desk when the executive director walks by. Does the executive director always leave right on time, and is she really big on people not overworking? Then she's going to value that. So it's really thinking about these kinds of things, looking at when you're at board meetings, who sits where, who's talking, knowing what people are wearing in the job, what they're wearing when they're meeting at a community level versus when they're going to say something at the government versus when they're, at a board meeting. I know when you're a VISTA, you don't have a lot of money, or even early on in your career. I used to buy pretty much everything at Target or Goodwill, but you can still have one jacket. You can still have something that really helps. And ask people what the dress is. I used to have a job where I would have some high-level meetings and then have to go to the community right afterwards. Well, I didn't want to be wearing my suit at the community-level meetings. To me, it came across as feeling very pretentious. So I would wear a really colorful shirt and black pants and then take the suit jacket off. Simple little things that you can do to make yourself feel like you're feeling authentic to yourself. You don't want to be someone you're not, but you're also fitting into the community that you serve. And it just takes that time to observe people. So we would love, because I'm sure that many of you have some really good ideas. So if you have any suggestions, we just posted a resource on here of 10 tips to look great, a Huffington Post blog. But if you have any suggestions on how, where you got things, I've actually remember I had some Vistas who used to lend each other their briefcases or, their professional bags for things. So whatever suggestions that you have, please share away. It'd be great to have this, to have the knowledge coming out. Okay, so now we with the stop, look, now we're talking about listening. So you have your OSOT, your on-site training and orientation. You often will additionally have, whether it's in your job or whether it's a job afterwards, new staff onboarding process. They're going to tell you some things, okay? I encourage you go a step deeper. Ask, see what they're saying about what makes an employee successful. Listen to what the priorities are. What are the current priorities? What are the future priorities? In this political climate, there's been a lot of changes with where funding is going in different organizations. When you maybe started and received your VISTA assignment, things might have changed on a state level. When I started my VISTA service, I was working at the Denver Indian Center, and I had studied a lot with the Native American community, but my understanding was really theoretical, so I took a lot of time to really sit down with people and just listen to what people were going on and understand the culture of that community. That was critical. I mean, I was 22 years old, fresh out of college. I didn't really know a lot. Taking that, I think, helped them respect me, and I saw this as one of the questions people were coming in on, how to really feel like you're not looking like a deer in the headlights. To me, listening, asking questions just really will help you get insights but also be seen with a level of respect. So I see some great questions that people are putting in there about clothing. Another chat question is, what else from your experience did you, when you started your position here, or other questions around how to stop, look, and listen? So things that you did or questions that you maybe asked that you're like, oh, that was a really good question that helped me get insight into my service. Please, again, share in this chat box. Because this is this macro level, kind of like the big picture, overarching, maybe even some suggestions of things you did once you knew you were going to have your VISTA assignment and how you prepared yourself for into your next job. So the next, we're kind of going in, we're at that big macro level, 20,000 foot view. Now we're going a little bit deeper into office dynamics. This is, to me, the people behind the processes and systems. It is always, throughout your career, please remember this, it is about relationships, always about relationships. And I mean this in a really authentic way, not in a fake way about relationships. It's about building authentic relationships. So the first thing at an organization is knowing the who. You get your org chart when you start. You'll be like, okay, this is what this is. These are the people with the titles. But the reality is knowing kind of the people behind that little black and white chart of the org chart. Who's the go-to person? That person might be the one who's been there for a really long time, or the person who actually coordinates between all the departments. They might be that person who kind of has their finger on the pulse of the organization. They might be the one that you go to when, you have a question. I remember I was in an organization and there was a woman who'd been there for so long, and she just really understood the personnel dynamics of some of the history. And some of this history could seem pretty minute coming in, but can have a really big impact. And I remember early on, I would ask her questions, and I trusted her. She was able to confidentially tell me what was going on and how to handle the situations differently, so I was able to be more effective. Again, smaller organizations, you might not have that person. Other ones you do. Then there's the make things happen person. Sometimes they're the same people, sometimes they're not. In my current role, there's someone in my current role here at GW who, there's the list of how you actually get rooms and catering at a university. And then she knows, like, who are the people that if you forget something will be able to take care of it for you the last minute, or how to find out if a room's really available before you do all the paperwork. She's my make things happen person, and you know, it's really can save me a lot of time. And then some of the other ones, who handles the supplies and meetings, who's your tech guru, which might not be that IT person. The IT person might be the person who handles it for the whole organization, but someone else might be really good at doing pivot tables in Excel or charts or things like that. So it's knowing these kind of people. So I love some of the questions that are coming in. We got another, keep going with this. So if you have other key people in your organization, fill that information in for us too. So the next is the what. So we got the who, the what. First and foremost, obviously, you've got your VAD. You know, your VISTA assignment description, it's a useful tool. You'll be working towards getting that VAD going. However, it's really important to think about how to be successful, you know, even beyond this, to really know what's going on and to figure out what insights can your supervisor offer. If you're in a site that's had VISTAs for an extended period, ask them, what have you loved about previous VISTAs? What hasn't worked? What are you looking for? Also think about what perspectives can colleagues provide. They might be colleagues within the organization, but if you're at a smaller organization, it might be the volunteers, might be the community partners, other nonprofits, really getting that information. I find early on, if you can make smaller shifts in how you're doing things, you can avoid kind of going pretty off course for workplace success. It'll help you stay more focused. So we got the who, what. Of course, we then are going to the where. I don't know about you all, but when I first started a job, I'm like, where do I go eat lunch? Where do people go? What do people do? Where's the office spot? You know, where are the little hidden spots? So kind of, again, just asking people for this. You can learn a lot about the culture of an organization. I worked at one organization, beautiful kitchen, it's gorgeous. No one ever ate in there. Were they going out to lunch? Nope. People sat at their desk. People felt very overworked at the organization, and it was a really big clue about the culture there. So really getting a sense of that, knowing where the hidden spots are, where you can actually go and escape. I love, there's a great Seinfeld episode where George actually builds a bed under his desk because he needs to escape. Now, I'm not necessarily a proponent of that, but sometimes you need to get away. Sometimes it's going outside. Now, my VISTAs, we worked up in Maine, couldn't always go outside in the winter, so it's knowing where the places are where you need to escape, where sometimes it means you need to make a personal call, or you're on an important work meeting call, a conference call, and you need a quiet space. Because, you know, as we know in this day and age, and often with VISTAs, you're in kind of like an open space or a cubicle. You might not have an office. So it's knowing that, oh, this person's on vacation for a week, I can use their office. And also kind of checking out the hot spots. In my current office, actually no one hangs out in the kitchen, but there's that, remember that go-to person I talked about? A lot of people hang out at her office. There was another organization that I worked at where my office just happened to be right by the CEO's office. All of the big wigs used to hang out there. It was a great spot if you needed to connect with them or want to be seen or, you know, have an informal conversation, that's where you went. So sometimes these are things that you just have to get from, like, looking around and seeing what's going on, and you usually can pick up on it. It requires you pausing, though. It goes back to that pause concept of really looking at what's going on. Okay, so then we talk about the when. This might seem, again, some of this stuff might be like, why is this a big deal? But knowing when your supervisor likes to have meetings, when are they at their best, can make a big difference in how you feel in the job. My predecessor at my job here used to like to sit down with my supervisor on Friday afternoons. Now, I'm not a big fan of Friday afternoon meetings. I'm usually liking to wrap things up. I'm kind of one of those people, I like to come in on Monday with a clean desk. So that didn't work for me. Well, when I first started, she was in the habit of that. So I used to go in there on Fridays, but instead of sitting down at her desk, I would stand in the doorway. So I kept the meeting shorter. And as a result of this, I also realized that she needed more information from all of us. So we started to establish weekly Monday morning meetings, Monday afternoons rather, because that worked for everyone's time. Things like that. Some people really love getting asked questions first thing in the morning. Other people like it later, knowing when people are at their best. You know, you want to set yourself up and then for it. Asking how much time off you need, when to ask for time off. Some bosses need 2 months in advance. Some people are like, oh, just tell me a week in advance. And then when do they talk shop and when do they talk fun? it just will help you feel more comfortable where you're knowing, kind of feeling more natural. And again, I like to remind people when you start any job, and I've had, as I said, a lot of jobs, the first couple weeks are going to feel awkward until you feel some of this out. So finally is the how. How you ask depends on the power and influence if you're at a larger organization. Sometimes seniority can really matter in an organization, sometimes it's not. Some people who are senior level, you know, might want, they're on the road all the time, so they want really clear emails with a very, and we're going to talk about emails later, with a very clear subject line. Some people want 15-minute check-in meetings. So it's really knowing what are the dynamics, finding out who really has seniority, what the seniority is. The board member might have more over someone else. So it's knowing when a meeting is needed, knowing when, you know, do people prefer questions via email, phone, in person at meetings? I've learned after several years here in my job what kind of questions my boss likes to get via email, which ones I talk about in staff meeting, which ones I just want to informally ask her. I learned that pretty quickly the first couple months here within the job, trying to get a sense of that, because everyone has a different work style. Meetings are a big thing. We've all read those articles about what they do for people and how they're not productive, yet people still love to schedule them. And you're still going to have people at your organization who get upset if they didn't get an email about being at that meeting. You need to start to figure out people who want to be included in every meeting even if they don't go, people who don't want to get those evites. My boss here actually still uses a paper calendar. So even though we schedule things via electronic calendar for everybody else and I send her the evite, I make sure I'm with her that she writes it down on her paper calendar. That's her style. So it's just a little extra step that makes her feel like she's getting the information she needs. So it's one of those things that, again, you have to kind of get a sense of what's going on at your organization. And sometimes, to be honest, this can be tough to figure out. It sometimes requires you actually asking somebody and saying, we're planning this event, at what point do you want to be informed about this? We're on this project, you know, how many emails do you want to get, when do you want to get that information? You might think those questions feel junior questions to be asking. I actually think they're very, very senior level questions to be asking, because you want to know what someone needs for their success, for their work style. So, okay, we've got the who, what, when, where. Now let's dig in. We've kind of gone from the higher level to the mid-level. Let's get into this communications culture. You know, I've been working for 25 years, and I will tell you, I still use this mantra to think, okay, pause again. Is this the way I want to be communicating? Does this need to be in person? Does this need to be in emails? You know, it's staggering, the stories that I hear on these career websites about people just really screwing up places in the workplace because they don't pause, they don't think and pause. So let's dig a little bit more in this. And what better person to dig with than the thinker? So, think, write, speak carefully. Err on the cautious side and err on the positive side. There's research that shows 50% of positive emails are read as neutral, and 50% of neutral emails are read as negative. So being mindful that you just can't, you know, you might think that your tone is really upbeat and someone's not going to read it that way. Finding a voice that works for you, for a warmer voice, depending on who you're working with. You know, somebody, you know, like to start my emails with things like, hey, how was your weekend? I knew you had your child's birthday party. How was it? How were things going? I like to start emails that way. I like to end emails always with a thank you. Thanks for your work on this. Please let me know if there's anything I can do. You want to find a voice that comes naturally to you. If you're concerned that you are coming across as maybe not as warm and people aren't receiving things as well, have other people really look at this stuff and think about, read other people's emails to start to see what, how it's resonating with people. You also, within this, want to think about, do you want a clear written record of something? Anytime you put it on email, there will be a record that could be found. We see this all the time. Do you need to copy someone? Do you need to blind copy someone on that? Double check if you're blind copying somebody. double check, is this a reply or reply all situation? I had a grad assistant work for me several years ago that hit reply to me instead of forward to her friend and said something that was incredibly inappropriate. And I will tell you what was most disappointing about this person was not that that happened, because my feeling is we all do things like this. We all make mistakes. It was how she handled it afterwards, that there was no real expression of remorse or apology or self-reflection. So these things are bound to happen. Think about it in that how you handle it, how you take responsibility for things when they do go astray, that's critical. So again, reiterating this, review them. Think about the reader's needs in mind. This goes back to, and a lot of what we're doing today is building on each other. This goes back when I talk about the hierarchy. Think about it. Is someone who likes a lot of those details? What kind of tone does that person prefer? You're writing your email for them, not necessarily for you. So I'm going to say that again to remember. You're writing your email for them, not necessarily for you. This is going to help you get what you need, but thinking about your reader in mind, okay? And then to reiterate, reply, confidentiality. You know, maybe you're upset at somebody and your initial reaction, I don't know about you all, is like, I'm going to tell this person I can't believe this. They blame me for something. Pause. Take time, go for a walk, grab a cup of coffee, go talk to somebody. You know, I watch a lot of cat videos or funny animal videos where I'm like, okay, I need to breathe. I meditate. So sometimes I'll do a 2-minute meditation to get perspective. This is a really hard skill for me in particular, and for a lot of people, to take that pause and to think about, you know, if I'm upset at somebody, maybe I need to go call my friend at lunchtime, vent about it, and then get the language that I want to have. Maybe I need someone else to reread my email for me to make sure that it's worded well. Maybe I need to just go down to their office. Take the time to do that. This is true for everything. We see this, people post things on Facebook and Twitter. I met a guy recently who lost his job because he could not stop putting things on his Twitter account that were very politically divisive, and he lost his job. You know, if you have any doubt, don't email. Don't put it in writing. If you have any doubt, pick up the phone. Stop in someone's office. And then I really am a big believer, first and foremost, see if you can find allies within your organization to talk with if you're concerned about your communications, particularly when you're new. Ask someone to review these emails, because they're going to be able to give you that kind of perspective that I think can really help you just see things in a way that sometimes we can't, whether it's that we're in the heat of the moment or whether we're just trying to navigate that we're early on in our career. As I said to you, my experiences have come from not doing things right. You know, sending something out and someone misinterpreting it, and immediately, if someone misinterprets something, it's not that, don't do the false apology, like, I'm sorry you feel that way. That's going to not be a good way to handle it. You take ownership for something and saying, let me know, what was it about this email that sounded this way? Let's talk about this. You know, taking ownership and having the character, that's what makes you more professional in the workplace. So now I'm going to turn it over to Josh. We're going to have a bit of a break, and Josh is going to give you kind of taking a lot of what we talked about here into practical application of what this means in a site. Then I'm going to keep going in some more, and then we're going to have another guest speaker.
All right. So thanks, Denise. And it's time, as you said, to welcome our first guest speaker. Josh Edwards served as an AmeriCorps Vista member for the 2015-2016 year with the Mount Carmel Health System at the Healthy Living Center in Columbus, Ohio. During his service, Josh assisted in the development of a variety of health and wellness programs for vulnerable communities on the west side of Columbus. Because of his service here, the Healthy Living Center created a position for Josh so that he can continue the work that he had begun, and he's now entering into his second year of full-time employment with the center, where he assists in the supervision of their current VISTA member. So Josh, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Andy. I'm grateful to be here with you guys today. Like Andy said, I work at the Healthy Living Center in Columbus, Ohio. addressing issues of obesity, infant mortality, and chronic conditions. We're providing holistic health and wellness services to the entire city of Columbus, empowering and equipping everyone to embrace health behavior changes. We accomplish this through a variety of things: healthy food, nutrition, fitness classes, stress management, parenting support programs, chronic condition education, as well as community advocacy and meetings. So my time as a VISTA at the Healthy Living Center really provided me with a lot of valuable experience that eventually did bring me into the professional work environment here. There were a few key takeaways that I found in my first year there, the first of which being effective communication. I had to navigate communication preferences of my supervisor, which meant taking time to ask her what she preferred. For example, when I first started, she'd send a lot of emails. I found that I felt like I was drowning in emails all the time. And there was a lot of valuable information in everything that she was sending me. But when I was starting, I didn't always respond to a lot of things because I didn't particularly feel like there was a need to. But I found that early on in my meetings with her that she really would like me to be an over-communicator. It's her style. And so I've learned that it's perfectly okay for me to ask questions about communications because it's so fluid, and it's important that you know the way that they are communicating and they know the way that you're communicating and what you prefer. Now that I've been working here for over 2 years, our communication styles shifted a bit as we've learned one another's preferences. I found that communicating about the way you communicate is really helpful to do early on because it kind of helps you create that space to ask questions like that when you're in a one-on-one meeting. The next thing is staying organized. So when I first started as a VISTA, this really was my first experience having to manage multiple projects at once with full-time work. I was also a student at the time, and I was managing my projects at school as well. So I remember having to learn how to keep up with a lot of moving parts from the day-to-day. And I developed through trial and error kind of my own to-do list system for my daily tasks. And for me, that's a hard notebook where I'm writing things down with pen and paper. And I kind of basically create a checkbox beside every task that I have to do. I'm always mindful when something comes up where I'm thinking, oh, that's something I need to do. I write it down immediately because I'm not a person who's going to be so quick to just remember it an hour and a half later. I have to write it down, and so my notebook's part of me when I'm at work. I also found, too, that when there were recurring tasks that I was doing on a weekly or a monthly basis, we use Outlook at where I work, and for me to just add a calendar reminder, it pops up on my calendar, and I remind myself, okay, I need to do that today. Another thing, too, regarding organization is that I also came to quite a few meetings early on when I was in my VISTA year, kind of without a plan, without an agenda, to discuss either whether this was one-on-one and with my supervisor or in smaller program planning meetings. And I found that learning how to create an agenda for a meeting was really important for me to use someone else's time well and to stay focused. It's really transferred into my current work as I'm always having to prepare for meetings, creating an agenda and following up with minutes and action items. I found that what seems like little things really demonstrates showing strong initiative to my supervisors, which I really do believe played a heavy influence in their decision to hire me. And finally, staying engaged. I found that multiple times when I was in a lot of meetings during my early part of my VISTA year, where I came to the meeting almost not knowing what the meeting was about, and sometimes I'd be in a meeting that I didn't think it really applied to my bad or my personal responsibilities, and so it was easy for me to kind of space out, or I might be kind of intimidated because some of the players that were at the table, I'm like, well, I'm just a VISTA, but I found that after navigating this with my supervisor, I developed a plan to help me stay focused during meetings that weren't always going to be relevant, particularly maybe to me or the work that I'd be doing. And I was encouraged to be willing to ask questions, even when it was an environment that maybe was not maybe my space. It still spoke really loudly, and it helped me to stay in tune with what was going on. I also found that being intentional about taking notes really helped me to stay focused. At some points, I've even become like a minute taker for some of the larger meetings that we're at on a recurring basis, which requires you to pay closer attention if you're having to be the one to document everything that's being said and being able to share it with the other people who are at that meeting. And I think that also really shows it really shows to the people in the community too who you are, what you're about, and how interested you are in the things that are going on in the community that you're working in. I think that it really helps you to develop your personal network. There were many unique meetings that I was privileged to be a part of because of my Vista year that if it wasn't for my Vista year, I would never have met some really important nonprofit leaders in the community that I work in that I wouldn't have otherwise met. And now in my current position, I still work with those people every day. And with your own career development, you might not know who you'll be working for or with in the future. And something that my supervisor shared with me early on, and now that I'm helping assist with supervising other interns, is that never ever think that your role isn't being looked at or what you're doing isn't being looked at by other people, because everything you do is an informal job interview. There's always room to learn and grow from your mistakes, but how you navigate your Vista year really will bear more weight than you might think with everyone you're interacting with, whether it's in the agency that you're currently serving or the community partners that you're working with. And that's all I got.
Oh, so I guess it goes back to me. And it was great because actually he just talked really right on the mark around taking responsibility for your supervision. So some of the things I'm going to say here I think he's already touched really well on. And this is true, you know, particularly even in my career coaching business, I'm amazed at people who are, you know, much further along, 10, 20, 30 years professionally, and they have played the victim role in their job or the why isn't my boss doing this, you know, the blamer. And it's really your responsibility to set yourself up for success with this. So, you know, obviously, as you get further and further in your career, as part of an interview process, you really want to make sure that your supervisor is aligned to how you see the world and how you want supervision. But it's a really good learning. I tell you, some of the best learning I've ever done have been with really difficult supervisors. I asked one person that I ended up working for in the third interview, I said, what do you think the hardest thing of the job is going to be? And she said, working for me. And she was absolutely right. I have to be honest with you. And I gained so much from learning how to manage that situation. I know Bethany, someone's going to post right now something from Vista Campus. There was an actual webinar that was specifically on managing up. So there's a lot of terms you probably hear. It's called managing up, managing down, managing sideways. This one is really about how to navigate this Vista supervision you know, how to manage this. So here are a few things I'm just going to dig in a little deeper on. But I definitely encourage you to also check that to really specifically see just that webinar. Make sure you have mutual expectations. You know, really clarify what they mean by things. It's incredible how we think they mean one thing. You know, Josh was talking about, you know, responding to emails. You know, with someone, if some boss says, well, people don't respond to emails, they don't know if they've gotten it or not. So ask details around that. Find out what the organizational priorities are. Again, we've talked about that. That could have changed from when you accepted the position, and things can constantly be evolving. I like to talk about that, you know, part of the work world is just learning how to surf the water faster and better. It doesn't mean you're ever going to have calm water. It's knowing how to surf it. One thing I saw, I've managed many Vista programs, and there is often this 3, 6, 9 month mark and almost a panic level. People feel like, oh my God, I need to know everything by the 3-month mark. Well, it's impossible. You certainly do want to use that time to kind of front load as much information, and this is where working with your supervisor and saying, what do I need to be successful to learn right away? Who do I need to talk with? Taking a little extra time. It goes back to the very beginning of this presentation where I said taking the time to get to know people. What accomplishments do they really anticipate for the 6-month mark? What would that look like? And then what do you need at the 9-month? Because I often see between the 6 and the 9-month mark, people start to panic because they feel like the 9-month is getting close. What if they haven't gotten everything done? So really making sure you kind of have these open lines of communication, having as much as possible sit-downs with your supervisor and be like, I'm not sure I'm going to achieve this. What do I need to do to feel on track? Here are some things that do help you feel on track. Early wins. It's going to build your confidence. Again, I would say, you know, I was going to say even if you're new in your career, but I don't even think that that's true. When I started my job here, and I've been working for, at that point, over 20 years, I tried to have some early wins because that helped my supervisor and my colleagues be like, oh, she's working hard. I trust her. She's doing things. You want to be careful and make sure those early wins aren't things that are stepping on someone else's toes or telling someone what to do. So really thinking about what that would be, and I want to reiterate, they don't have to be big things. It could be creating a template for a volunteer email that had never been created before. It could be, you know, doing a new activity at an after-school program that you've never run before. It could be getting a new in-kind donation for a fundraising event. So small wins just help you. I mean, research shows, as I study positive psychology, and this positivity priming can help build your confidence. It can broaden and build your strength on your skills. I'm a big fan of a solution-oriented mindset. This term mindset is really hot right now. I'm a big fan of the book Mindset by Carol Dweck. We'll show the link to that later on. We'll show her information at the resource page. This has to do approaching your work solution and growth-oriented. Knowing that things are going to be tough at times, and when there is a stumble, how to look at this and saying, I can grow and I can win from this. It means that there's a problem at the organization, not just going to a colleague and saying there's a problem, but saying, hey, I saw that doesn't seem to be that we're getting X, Y, these newsletters out on time, and this is creating this challenge. We were talking about this meeting. Here are some ideas that I have. I'm not sure if you've tried this enough already, if you've tried this already. Remember how I talked about making sure you're not stepping on people's toes and feeling rude with things, that you're pushing people with stuff, but you're going in with a solution. You may or not have all the answers, but you're at least approaching it in that way, and then you're approaching in this way of knowing that you're constantly growing. This idea of a growth mindset is one that you should have throughout your life, you know, and it actually, what it does is it minimizes a defensive attitude. It enables you to really dig in deeper and go further with this attitude of like, I am constantly wanting to learn. So there's some resources that was posted on here by Joan, posted the Mindset online. Check out the site. There's some good stuff in there. And we are next going to be going to patience. Not exactly a strong suit of mine. I'm amazed a number of people are on this call. Still stands, you all are clearly a lot more patient than me. Actually, once in my life, even tried to plant patience to cultivate. It wilted and died. Wasn't one of the best moments in my life. This is hard in all ways in life. So just a couple things to touch base with on this. It requires accepting, allowing, and assessing, okay? When you first start your job, there's going to be some things that you don't love. There's going to be some things you don't know. And that's true not just when you start your job, but throughout your job. And it's learning how to accept this. Sometimes it means creating systems to minimize some things that you don't love. Sometimes it means trading work with people. One of the best gifts that I find as you get further into your career is being comfortable with saying, I don't know how to do this. I don't know. And it gives someone that space to say, here, let me help you out. It doesn't make you look bad. It actually makes you look better. And we have this myth that we need to have every answer, but it comes across as false and empty and often egotistical. So really having the acceptance for knowing things. Some of these nonprofit sites that you're at have been waiting for a vista. So things are going to be kind of not all the information is going to be there, or they have too many expectations with things. So you have to allow time for these results. You might have to educate other people on what is realistic. You know, when I directed a VISTA program in Maine with 35 members, you know, it was so common for these VISTAs. They were just feeling like, you know, they should have had everything figured out right away. They should have, already achieved things. And then there's a comparison. If you happen to have other Vistas with you, oh, I achieved this and you didn't. And, there's a famous quote that says, I think it's comparison is the thief of happiness, something along the lines of that quote. And so just allowing time for your own things, constantly assessing the goals and the fit. Knowing that sometimes you need to be talking to someone and saying, I don't have the skills for this goal that you put in this VAD. How do we make this happen? And again, assessing fit. What do I need to do? How can I learn for this? And sometimes it means accepting what is, that this is just your year of service, that this isn't everything you expected it to be. And I'm going to take this information and for my next job, say these are some things I don't want, or these are some questions I need to ask when I'm in the interview for the next one of what I do want. So it's just being really mindful of this. Again, I am a big fan of several things about this to help you do this, because this is great in theory. In actuality, in practice, can be a lot harder. One, I mentioned I do mindfulness. It's really big in the workplace right now. I take walks, I run, I talk to people. I get resources from people. Always find people that are like, I would say, like I like to say, it's a chapter or two ahead of you professionally. They can give you that perspective. I've often found at times in a workplace when I'm not doing things the way that I might want to, if I have a colleague who can help observe me in a workplace when I'm in a meeting or when I'm presenting, that can give me honest, supportive feedback that can help me kind of see how I'm doing for some of this. So it's really easy in theory to just put this stuff in here. It's really hard in practice, and I mean that as a constant practice. You get better and better at it, but that accepting, allowing, and assessing. When you do that and you cultivate that patience, you give yourself the space for things to grow naturally instead of forcing it to happen. So the next thing we're going to go to is we're going to have another guest speaker, who's going to give us a little bit more insights, kind of taking a lot of this from theory, and then how does this mean it to practice, and then we'll wrap it up and open up for questions.
Great. So I'd like to welcome our second guest speaker, who is Amanda Pham. Amanda's in her second year with the AmeriCorps Vista program. Last year, Amanda served a term with the North Mississippi Vista Project, where she worked with K-12 STEM education programs across the state. When she finished her first year, she immediately began her current term as a Vista leader with the first Vista program in Indianapolis, Indiana. Amanda immersed herself in AmeriCorps directly after graduating high school, and at the age of 18, she was the youngest member in the North Mississippi Vista Project at the time. She's here today to share some of the lessons that she's learned from being a Vista. So Amanda, what do you have to share?
All right, thank you, Andy. I'm very happy to be here today. As Andy said, I joined AmeriCorps directly after I graduated high school. So AmeriCorps was actually my first full-time job experience. I had worked some summer jobs and odd things during high school, but I had never worked 8 to 5 with the same group of people every single day. So both of my projects with AmeriCorps had led to me working with very diverse groups of people all over the nation, and both of my host site supervisors, I was very fortunate, have been very supportive of me as an individual. So I'd like to take some of my experiences and share them with you about starting AmeriCorps at kind of a young age. And so one of the first things that I learned from working with so many different people was that the term experience has a lot of different definitions to different people. Some people base your level of experience off of your education or trainings or certifications. Other people tend to base experience off of accomplishments and personal development and their just initial impressions of you as a person. So I learned very quickly from working with people of different age ranges, different backgrounds, that every person has their own unique set of qualifications and knowledge that shape the way that they work. And it's really important to, like Denise said, stop, look, and listen and learn about every person you work with, because if you stop to take the time to learn how they got to where they are, you'll end up being able to work alongside them much better. So as you meet new coworkers, definitely try not to make generalizations or assumptions. Don't judge the competency of individuals based off of your initial impression or a singular fact, and work to really get to know the people that you're working alongside. So another important thing that I learned very quickly is that there is no correct way to accomplish a task. There are a lot of different ways to go about any task, whether it's setting a meeting or, planning an event. And some strategies may tend to be more effective than others, but there's always room for improvements in whatever you're doing. So in Mississippi, I worked a lot with middle and high school robotics teams, which are what are displayed on the screen right now. And many of them were school groups from around the state. So I would visit teams early in the school year to help their teachers set up an organizational strategy and a game plan for their meetings and help to get them on track. The students and the teachers on these teams ended up coming from a very wide range of backgrounds. Some of the schools had several thousand students and were kind of inner city, while others were small attendance centers where there would be a couple hundred students for kindergarten through 12th grade in a very rural area. So I quickly learned when I was working with these teams that the ideal organizational system for one team would not be the same for another. If I went to a school in a rural area, they will have completely different needs from inner city schools or suburban areas. So I had to learn to be very adaptable with my teaching styles, and sometimes that meant that I had to introduce organizational systems or like setups for meetings that I wouldn't normally consider to be ideal, but it worked the best for that group of people at the time. So sometimes it's really just about stepping outside of your comfort zone to find the best method to approach a task and, making those judgments based off of the individual task and the group of people you have right in front of you at the time. And the last thing that I've learned very well is that it's important to get to know your strengths and weaknesses and to own them both. So based off of our experiences, we each have tasks that we tend to do very well at. And then we also have tasks that we either struggle with or just really don't enjoy doing. So in order to really improve upon yourself professionally, you have to be comfortable with both your strengths and your weaknesses. For example, I have a lot of experience with public speaking and being in leadership roles, but I currently don't have a college degree yet. I'm right out of high school and I'm rather young for my position. So while I can write grant proposals and coordinate meetings fairly well, I have little to no knowledge of advanced mathematics or some of the other things that you learn while you're in college. So I take every opportunity I can to improve upon my strengths and to get to use them. But I'm also very honest with myself and the people around me about my weaknesses. My lack of knowledge isn't necessarily an excuse for me not to do certain tasks, but I make sure to incorporate it in my planning that sometimes I'll need to ask for additional assistance or go out of my way to learn something new in order to get the job done. So it's important to take time to learn about your coworkers' strengths and weaknesses as well. Two of my biggest supporting groups in my terms have been my coworkers at my old site, which is on the left, and then my current Vista Leader team on the right. I got to know the people at my site, and then I could learn their strengths and weaknesses and figure out how we could best work together to accomplish tasks. So going back to what Denise said, it's really just about getting to know the people around you and stopping and listening to everybody. So I'll pass it back to Denise now.
Thank you so much. You all have been wonderful of putting into practice what we're all talking about and just kind of how to navigate it in a very real way. So I love what you all are adding. So thank you so much. So the last part we're going to talk about before opening up for questions is dress for the job you want. And what I mean here is not physically dress, but figuratively know where you want to go and think about how you're presenting yourself in that way. So, first and foremost with this is excel in your job and more, So think about what they're asking you to do, but then go beyond this. you know, this is what I often talk about. I like to say it's called leaning out. And it's pushing the boundaries of the job definition. If you're thinking you want to, you know, move into this direction, even if it's observing somebody for a day, but excel first and foremost at your job and what you're being asked to do. So second, when you're doing all of this, is put in your time, but keep your life in balance. It is so easy when you're a Vista. You can't have other jobs. You're putting in lots and lots of hours. Really, if you are not taking care of yourself, you cannot take care of the community. Is to always remember this is a marathon. I think, you know, this is an epidemic across the country where we feel like we need to be plugged in all the time, despite the fact that research shows it's not healthy for us, despite the fact that we know that basically nobody can multitask, that the more you multitask, the actually less productive you are. So it's actually not increasing things. So taking time, be with other Vistas, taking a walk, whatever you need to do, going out in nature, you know, whatever it is that you can do that helps you kind of find that balance is really important. Be open to learning. Observe people. You know, I learn constantly from watching people, other people, that I really like their style, their word choice. When I was running the organization in Maine, the VISTA program, the executive director there, we used to handle this was from the governor's children's cabinet there, and she handled really high-level meetings. I don't think I ever heard her use the word but. She always used the word and in talking to people. She was very strong, but with a warm tone. So I spent a lot of time observing her and then just really pushing myself to kind of practice some of this and really learn about your field. This is a wonderful time to be going to events, learning about issues, particularly, you know, if you're in a town like DC or other towns where there's tons of events that there's free food. As a Vista, this is a really good thing. There's often the networking part has free food, so I'm a big, big fan of going to all of those. But again, it's also not only going to help you learn about your field, I also find it helps you learn what you don't want to do. You might go to an organization and be like, wow, seems like everybody at that organization is wearing suits all the time, or everybody seems kind of chaotic. You're going to get a sense of things, so it's really important. Always act professional, because you never know who's watching. Be so aware wherever you are, whether it's in the lunchroom, in your office, or you're in the happy hour, know that people are out there watching you. There's a level of the way that you want to be presenting yourself, particularly when you're younger, because you're building your reputation. And it's really important, and also, depending on where you're serving, a lot of these communities are small communities. I've done work in very small communities where that can really make a difference on how you're being perceived. And finally, finding role models. When I was running a VISTA program, there was one of the trainers. This was in the late 90s, and I just was so amazed at how she built her career and how she handled things. And so I asked her if we could just really sit down and connect. Well, what's that, 20-plus years later, we are still friends, and I'm still learning from her. Just the other day I had a call with her, and I remember asking her, I said, oh, what's next for you? Because she's always up to something latest and greatest. She's an extraordinary, Shoshana Kogan, she's actually a VISTA trainer. She's extraordinary. She said this line to me, and again, I'm learning from her always. She said, you know, at this point in my career, I'm not concerned with the height of my career. I'm concerned with the depth of my career. Stopped me cold. I'm like, oh, my gosh, what a profound way to think about where you're building your career. And this was from somebody who 20 years ago I thought, I really like the way she carries herself. So find people and really model with what you're doing with them. And you're going to learn. And some of the people you're going to sit down and have coffee with, and you're like, I didn't really connect with them. And other people, like I have with Shoshana, I've hired her as a trainer. I've trained with her. I'm a friend of hers, and she's like a role model of mine. So it's finding those people in your life that can just serve as those kind of perspective getters for you as you think about what's going to be next. So we've talked about a lot today. Let's just do a quick recap. One, slow down. Really take the time. This is a marathon, not a sprint. It's going to help you, whether it means the way you start your first couple weeks, the way you start your day, whether you start your emails. Taking that slowing down approach is just going to give you a chance to actually be down the road much faster, more effective in your career progression. Communicate with care. Do I need to check this email? Is this reply all? Should I actually go and talk to somebody? Should I schedule a meeting? Setting yourself up for success. What do you need from your supervisor? If you're not getting it from your supervisor, which we don't always all get it, who can you get this from? How can you rely on other people? What do you need to take control of your own success? Patience and accepting this process. Knowing is accepting, allowing, assessing, giving the time for this to unfold, for the learning, kind of really getting that, like, you know, growth mindset. Finally, leaning out. Thinking about, we all go through national service. We're all public service people. We believe in making a difference in the world. How do you want that to be? How do you push the boundaries of your job definition so you're doing a great job as your VISTA? And you're thinking about where you want to go, and leaning out means you're leaning forward. You're leaning to where you want to be going next. You're cultivating the knowledge, the mentors, the relationships, the skills to help you ultimately make a difference in the world. This is what we all believe in this. And finally, to remember this, here's some of these resources. I'm just going to go to the quote because the last quote is on here. And to remember, all these resources, we're going to be downloading them. You can get them from here. They were posted in the chat. And then finally, to remember this, because it can feel really messy. I like to call this career messiness. I think that that's the joy and the fun of this. If you can see this path, it's not your path. You have to create your path. It comes from every single step that you are taking. That becomes your path. So knowing that it doesn't mean everything's going to be clearly right in front of you. It means you're creating and building this path. So with that, I think we're going to be opening this up to questions.
Yes, indeed. So thank you, Denise, and thanks to Josh and Amanda for sharing so much of your wisdom. Don't go away because we do have time for Q&A that we want to get to in just a moment. But first, I want to invite all of you to share your impressions in our evaluation poll. So you'll see that open on the right side of your screen. 10 quick questions. You can use the scroll bar to see all the questions. Your input and suggestions really help us to improve our webinars and to develop sessions on topics that are of interest to you. All right, so there you see it. So now we've given you a lot to think about, a lot of great suggestions and ideas, so it is time to get to your questions. As we mentioned earlier, there are two ways that you can ask a question. One is through the Q&A panel, and now that the poll's open, the Q&A is collapsed, but you can reopen it. There's a little triangle or like a little V-shaped symbol next to the Q&A. Click that, it'll reopen. You can submit your question there. And now I'm going to ask our operator to come back on the phone to give us instructions for asking a question by telephone. So Yomi?
Thank you. Participants on the phone, if you'd like to ask a question, please press *1 and record your name. Please make sure your line is unmuted and record your name clearly with the prompt. To withdraw your request, please press *2. Again, if you'd like to ask a question, please press *1 and record your name. One moment to see if we have any questions.
Okay, great. Well, while we're waiting for questions to come in on the phone, we have several questions that have come in from the Q&A. So the first one is a scenario that Victoria described, and she said that she has a boss who is somewhat disparaging or degrading of workers and talking with them, and so she was looking for some advice into how to address it. And unfortunately, my Q&A panel closed when the poll opened, and I can't get it to reopen, so I don't have all the rest of the wording of that question. But Denise, you may have seen that as well, so I'm going to turn to you first, Denise, to see if you had any thoughts about how to respond to a boss who's negative and critical and maybe not very supportive of
a couple things that I would say in that is, one, in that question, it sounds like there's many colleagues, so I would definitely start, particularly if you're younger, you know, and this is one of your first positions, talk to the colleagues and talk together and see how people are dealing with it. And instead of turning it into a complaint session, is really talking together, like how is this making you all feel? How do you manage this? Sometimes it's saying, you know what, I can't actually change a supervisor. That might just be the way that that person is, and I'm going to have to figure out how to mitigate this. Sometimes it's being upfront with the supervisor without calling them out on that specific thing and saying, you know, I want to make sure that I'm doing things in a way that you will help you most successfully. What can I do? Which often, to take that approach with a supervisor sometimes means you're swallowing your pride a little bit, because even though you know that they're not a good supervisor, it's, you know, swallowing your pride and saying to them, like, what can I do to be more successful in this way? I've also found that for me, when I deal with either a supervisor or a colleague that's challenging, I try to figure out, I wonder why that person is the way that they are. Is it that they're insecure? Is it that they're feeling threatened by someone else? Is it that, you know, that they're having some tough stuff going on in their lives at home and that they're just not doing well? Is it that they're overwhelmed in their job? Figuring out, you know, why the person is that the way that they are sometimes will help you come and approach the person with more compassion and more patience, even when it is frustrating, and it's a wonderful gift. And sometimes it just helps you understand how to work with them better. I had someone I worked for who I realized that no matter how many times I told this person I never wanted to be the executive director of that organization, she kept thinking I did. And I realized a lot of it was based on insecurity. And so any chance I could get to publicly praise her, whether in emails, at events, helped her feel like I was putting her in that place of executive director for her not to feel threatened by me, and that shifted the dynamic. So sometimes figuring out the why helped me to figure out the how.
All right, great. Thank you for that, Denise. Next up, Molly has a question, and this one I'm going to put to you, Amanda. So she asks, how do you deal with ageism? She said, people who are under 30 in the workplace often are treated like the personal assistant for other employees or as unofficial IT specialists, coffee runners. They always get pressured to answer the phones, etc. She said it's not specific to Vista, but it seems more like anybody who appears young might get treated this way. So Amanda, we'll start with you and see if you have any thoughts on that.
All right, so that's actually something that's kind of right up my alley. So I personally haven't really faced a lot of discrimination based off of my age, whether conscious or unconscious on people's behalf. But when I became a Vista leader, that was one of my main insecurities and concerns, was that I'm 19 and I am leading a group of people, most of which are at least 3 or 4 years older than me. I have some Vistas that are well into their 50s, and I was concerned that I would kind of get put in that position where people don't treat me equally or don't quite understand. And I know some other younger Vistas who have been in that situation. So I think it's just really important to make sure that people know to stand up for themselves and kind of show, like, this is what my role is on our team. These are the qualifications I have. Like, this is what I bring to our team. A lot of the time it's a partnership. So it's not necessarily about, like, okay, you know, you've been here longer, you're older than me, so that automatically makes you, you know, it gives you seniority, but it's also just about learning to work together. So I have one Vista who is almost in her 60s, so old enough easily to be my grandmother. And for us, I actually have a really great relationship with that person because we were very honest up front. She said, okay, I've been doing this for X number of years. These are the things that I really have experience in. What do you bring to the table? And just making sure that you're not discriminating based off of age and looking at everybody individually as a person with a certain set of skills and experience so they can contribute to the team, and making sure that everybody's roles on your team are well established, so that, like, make sure that the younger people, the under 30s, know that they don't have to be the coffee runners, that, you know, they have their own jobs and they were brought into this for specific reasons, and just communicate openly about, you know, everybody's strengths and weaknesses to figure out how you can work together regardless of the age gaps.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Yomi, do we have any callers on the phone with questions?
Not showing any questions in queue. As a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, please press *1 and record your name.
Okay, great. Well, we've got a few more questions here. So let's see. Next up, Brad asks, do you have any tips for those who may be serving within small organizations? I work with only one other full-time staff member, and then we have 2 other part-time staff members. Do you have any suggestions for how to best contribute as a VISTA to this kind of workplace? So Denise, maybe we'll start with you.
So it's tough sometimes like that. You know, part of it is feeling like, wow, do I have a community of people? I mean, one thing, kind of separate from how to contribute to there that I have seen when I have managed VISTA programs with small numbers is, I don't know what your community is like, but if there's other nonprofits that are in similar, situations, is as having a community of peers. You might get together on a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis with other VISTAs in the community or other people at, say you're at a youth serving organization or a homeless organization, and create kind of a best practices sharing group, a consortium of people. So that's just going to actually, I think, will help you build your network, hear what other people are doing, have other people to bounce ideas off of, and then ultimately when you create something like this, those ideas are going to make you more effective in your job if you just have one other person to kind of manage right there that you're working with, because you can only get so many good ideas from that one person. So, I think that sometimes it's nice when you just have one other person, you have a lot of autonomy. So that's the other thing I would encourage you to think about, is there's some new things and ways that you want to approach your work that you wouldn't be able to do if you had a lot of bureaucracy. There's some skills that you want to learn that this is a great chance. That's something I really found as VISTAs, is that you get a chance to learn skills. Are there some things that you want to tackle? When I've worked, actually, when I was at some organizations that were really small, I wrote a grant to get larger number of VISTAs or AmeriCorps members there. Is there something like that you could do to actually try to expand your team, even if it's not in your time, but down the road?
All right, great advice. We have a question here from Morgan. Again, it's kind of around workplace culture. So I'm going to put this out to all 3 of our speakers today. So Morgan says, how do I deal with colleagues who talk a lot about fun things when I'm trying to work? I try to, oh wait, it just went away. Anyway, she talks about trying to, focus on things that are serious and related to her work when others are talking about stuff outside of work, or what could be very distracting. So any thoughts? And I'll put that to Amanda, Josh, and Denise.
Yeah, I'll let one of those see if they want to answer first. I have some thoughts on that too, but see if any of them want to answer that first.
I'm happy to speak on that one. That's like a lesson that I'm learning every single day, especially when you're in a workplace culture that is very positive, or that there are really good relationships. It's a constant balance that I'm learning in my own work. What I found is that it's easier the more that I practice, basically just kind of practicing that assertiveness of like like you can jokingly say, time to get some work done. And I found that more often than not, it really does help when I'm trying to set that boundary of like, okay, we're on a deadline here, and we've been talking for, a few minutes. And I found that even in my own personal, when I've gotten carried away in conversations at times where I realize I'll step back after 5 minutes of chat, or 5 or 10 minutes of catching up over the weekend. You kind of feel it immediately in your body when you kind of know, okay, I've kind of crossed that line of what I should or shouldn't be doing, and being able to just kind of, at least for me, kind of just practice, just kind of saying, well, maybe we can grab lunch. Let's encourage us to have that communication at other times of the day when we know that we can take that time. But also, depending on where your office is located, trying to see if you can explore working in other locations or finding private space to work as well.
All right. Thanks for that, Josh. Amanda, anything that you would add?
Yeah, I mean, in any workplace environment, like obviously you want to get to know your coworkers, but at the end of the day, it is important to remain objective about whatever you're trying to do. So yeah, like Josh said, after a few minutes of catching up, or whenever it starts to feel like, whenever you start to feel consciously like you should be working on something else, just finding a way to politely bring yourself back to the work objectives. There's not really any shame in that, and it's not super rude as long as you're just wording things in a way that's polite to the other person.
All right, terrific, thanks. Yomi, do we have anyone on the phone lines?
No questions in queue.
Okay, great. A couple more here. Amanda asks, what to do when you feel like you were just thrown into the workplace and you're expected to work on projects that are unfamiliar to you? Sounds like this has happened to her. She says she feels overwhelmed right away. This then makes you feel like you never really get caught up, but the expectation is that you can do it all. So any advice or suggestions for someone feeling overwhelmed, like they're just thrown into the deep end?
You know, the first thing I want to say to that is, I hate to tell you this, it's just kind of the way of the world of the work. It's not just a VISTA thing. I think sometimes it feels more pronounced as VISTA because you're newer, there's this expectation of the VAD, there's this 1 year, so it feels, it's almost like it's magnified. I know very few people, you know, I've been career coaching now for 11 years. I've coached thousands of people. I know very few people who don't feel overwhelmed when they start and very few people who feel like they have the resources and knowledge to get things done. This goes back to asking people for what you need, not being afraid to saying, and you can do this in a way that's not complaining, but saying, I want to, and to frame it and to start the conversation with, I want to be successful. I want to achieve the goals here. I would love if we could sit down, whether it's with a supervisor or a colleague, and help map out what my priorities are, because you can't do everything all at once together. So what my priorities are, these are some of the gaps in my learning. How can I get this? Who's here to help get this? What do I do? And to actually even stop and ask and say, you know, what can I cut back on? You know, I've been working for 25 years, and this summer I had this conversation with my boss, and I needed to hear from my boss to actually say, Denise, you need to do less, because there's so many things that I wanted to do, and to hear her say that, then we could have this honest conversation, and I was very honest with her about what is our required things that we want to do, what are things that I'm doing, where are the gaps, where can I pull in other resources? So again, it goes to knowing that this is kind of the way of the world, what you can manage for yourself, and being upfront without feeling like you're coming across as complaining, but rather how can you manage all of this in a way that's successful, and what do you need? And I'm not sure, some of the VISTAs on the call might have some other more current experiences at their site that might relate to this.
All right, Amanda, Josh, do you have any thoughts to add here?
I think maybe just particularly it's a communication thing too with your direct supervisor. When something feels overwhelming, you are in that place, it's definitely worth a conversation. I found that working collaboratively with other VISTAs, I was very fortunate that my supervisor was a particularly organized individual, but communicating with other VISTAs during my service year who were kind of like, we were working in like a five organization collaboration. Other VISTAs were struggling with that kind of same exact thing, and what we found was they found that communicating with other VISTAs about the project was usually their projects was helpful because they were able to bounce ideas off of, you know, what's going on in their context and how can my particular experiences in this similar work, you know, how can I gain some tips or skills in this particular project. But also being able to have other conversations with other supervisors or other people in the agency or that might have some other guidance for you, I found has been particularly helpful. If your direct supervisor doesn't have the best words of encouragement or guidance for navigating difficult projects, I think other people might have some guidance, and it's always worth a conversation and trying to reach out.
All right, thank you so much, Josh. Let's go back to the phones and see if we have any callers there in queue.
Again, participants, if you'd like to ask a question, please press *1 and record your name.
All right. So it looks like we may have one more question here in the WebEx Q&A. Denise, are you able to see that question? Or perhaps Bethany, it's not visible to me. Oh, here we go. No, there's one more I cannot seem to find.
I think I've identified. There was one at the very beginning of the webinar that asked how to be taken seriously without coming across rude in your organization. Is that a question that we've addressed, or was that to one of the?
Yeah, that was the one where people want to talk about fun stuff, but she's got work to get done. So that was kind of, you don't want to seem rude, but but you've got to get the work done. Okay, well, seeing that we don't have any other questions coming in, I want to thank you all for your participation today. I especially want to thank our main speaker, Denise Riebman, who's the Director of Career Development and Alumni Services at George Washington University's Trachtenberg School, and also our guest speakers, Josh Edwards and Amanda Pham. I also want to thank our production team of Joanne Lau and Bethany DeSablin. I do want to invite you, we've got a couple other webinars coming up next month. On November 20th, we have Vista Benefits and Taxes, just the basics, everyone's favorite topic there, taxes. And then right at the end of the month on November 30th, we have a webinar on deploying decision-making insights to help strengthen your anti-poverty efforts. Both of those are at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Watch your inbox for invitations to both of those. We look forward to seeing you on another webinar soon. Thank you so much.